All right. We're doing a live reading of my self-insert Harry Potter fan fiction, John and Friends Save the World. I've got 10 people here. Less people were united under the fucking Florida shootings. I mean, this is a moment. Okay, we're just gonna start because we don't have any fucking time. All right. It was back to school for the gang. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and John were chatting about how they spent their summers on the Hogwarts Express. As always, none of them really did anything interesting. Except John, of course. John was a trained martial artist and monster hunter whose every day was packed to the brim with adventure. On top of that, he was insanely attractive. Really attractive. Hermione totally had a thing for him. When he wasn't spending his summers saving the world from interdimensional threats, he attended Hogwarts and saved everybody there too. Hermione was enamored by tales of John's past accomplishments. So yeah, I just made the Palestinians and Israelis sign that everlasting peace treaty. I was really confused because everyone said it would be hard, John said, not looking up from his Instagram feed, from which he had 15 million followers.
Everything must seem easy to you. Everything must seem easy to you.
Hermione said with twinkling eyes. John lifted up his patented aviators and met Hermione's eyes. That's not true. It's very hard to be this humble. He winked at Hermione and she couldn't stop herself from blushing. Across from them sat Harry and Ron, who had formed a special bond seeing as they were always in the shadow of John. Their relationship was tense and uneasy after particular events took place at Ron's house that both of them couldn't ignore. Harry was the optimistic one. He tried to hold Ron's hand along the ride, but Ron kept pulling back. As to not bring attention to themselves, Harry whispered his concerns.
We can't ignore what happened between us, Ron.
Don't call me Ronald, Harry. It was a mistake.
Don't say that, Ronald. Nothing about you is a mistake.
Fuck. Okay. Ron turned away to look out the window. Harry sighed. Right then, the sweet cart rolled towards the group, and they were gifted several pounds of complimentary candies thanks to John's immense popularity at Hogwarts. Seriously, he was the coolest kid there. Everyone looked to the sweets, wondering how they could ever finish all of it. John pulled out his wand and uttered, fuck. Shut the fuck up. Multiplicae, and the pile doubled in size. Everyone clapped for John and began to shove the candies into their bags.
Typical John, always the show-off.
A voice from the corner said. It was Draco Malfoy and his cronies. Harry stood up to face Malfoy.
Hey, you leave us alone, Draco. John is our Lord and Savior.
Draco pushed Harry back into his seat.
You scared to face me, eh?
You fucked it up.
What?
It says piss off, Potter.
Oh, it wasn't highlighted.
Fuck!
Piss off, Potter. I don't care about you.
Oh, God, this is such a shit show. God, Harry stayed quiet like the little bitch he is. Draco turned his attention to John, who was looking down at the floor. We did this.
You scared to face me, eh?
Just then, John pulled something from one of his various pockets on his iconic red and black trench coat. It was the Doom Caliber Knight, the rarest card in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Some people weren't even sure it wasn't just a myth.
That isn't possible!
Draco shouted in disbelief. John stayed silent and pulled out a 5-headed dragon. Draco made an angry venting noise in response.
This isn't fair! Nobody's supposed to have such a legendary deck!
John slid a black luster soldier onto the table and left Draco with a loss for words. John slouched back and grinned. Are you sure you still want to fight, Draco? Draco fumed and pounded his foot on the ground in anger. He stuck out his finger at John.
You win this round, but I'll come back with my deck stronger than you can imagine!
He then proceeded to storm off with his cronies. Everyone on the train clapped for John. A message owl flew through an open window and left a letter in front of John. Hermione snatched it excitedly and read it aloud in hopes to gain his affection.
Wow, it's a message from Dumbledore. It says, heard about what you did to that little shit Draco. You're such a fucking baller, my dude.
She recoiled from the crude language. John sighed and put the letter in his bag. Dumbledore is my friend, but honestly, I can't hold on to all the fan mail he sends me. It just piles up, John admitted. I'm just glad to put a stop to another bully, because bullying is wrong, he added. Harry tried to break in.
Hey, I stood up to him too.
John turned to Harry sternly and coldly. Hey, shut the fuck up, Harry. I was having a conversation. Harry looked to Ron and Hermione for support, but Ron was still looking out the window, and Hermione was lost, gazing at John's huge biceps. What an asshole, right? Born the chosen one, but can't let anyone else have some fame? John said to Hermione. She realized that her holiness was talking to her and fumbled a response anxiously.
Oh yeah, he's so awful, and you're like so great.
A brief moment of silence passed. Hermione couldn't wait any longer. She had to know. She squirmed, then stammered.
How are your biceps so big?
She realized what she said and then covered her mouth in shame. John was unfazed. Well, my huge biceps are just a side effect of my vegan CrossFitter lifestyle. Harry felt alone and unwanted. He shed a single tear and felt miserable for the remainder of the ride. When they got to Hogwarts, everything surprisingly went well. At the big feast, John managed to give his meal to starving African children, and everyone in the dining hall clapped for him. Afterwards, everyone went to their dorms. Harry and Ron shared a bunk bed, much to Ron's distaste. John slept on the bare floor to enhance his chi and create new life experiences. Hermione couldn't sleep. The idea of John doing CrossFit was too much for her, and instead she stayed up chatting with Luna about her.
I know it's a blessing just to be near him, but I need more than that, you know?
Hermione said, looking for reassurance.
He is quite the specimen.
Luna chided. She was using her hands to sift through the air, as if playing an imaginary instrument.
What are you doing?
Hermione asked.
Strumming the strings of the universe.
Luna said in a lofty tone.
You seem really overwritten sometimes. Like someone's trying really hard to make you interesting, but you're just annoyingly eccentric.
Is that so?
Luna said, continuing her gesturing. Hermione sighed. In the other room, Ron and Harry were wide awake, questioning each other's intentions.
Stop being such a twit, Harry.
Ron complained, desperately wanting to get away from it all.
I can't hide my feelings for you, Ronald.
Oh, why can't you just be a normal bloke, Harry? Go try to knob my sister or something.
If you didn't want me thinking of you, Ronald, you shouldn't have taken top bunk. There's nothing else to look at around here.
Oh, so you weren't top bunk of your chosen one status, you twit?
Harry stayed quiet for the rest of the night. Everyone woke up the next day, some more troubled than others. Everyone was required to attend the ceremony in John's honor. Hermione rushed to get a first-row seat. Ron put distance between himself and Harry was left all alone again. He shed a single tear. Dumbledore came out on stage with John following behind. He waited for the audience to settle before speaking. He held the silence for a long time before punching John's shoulder.
Oh, this fucking guy right here.
Oh, Dumbledore shouted. John blushed and reluctantly accepted the praise.
Like, let me get this straight. I'm a fucking idiot compared to this guy. I hire Quirrell and Lockhart, and they could have done something serious damage. If it wasn't for this guy right here, he figures each of them out within a month.
He punched John on the shoulder again.
Up 5, buddy.
Dumbledore extended his hand for a high five. John accepted.
Fuck yeah!
Dumbledore cheered. Dumbledore grabbed the mic and repeated again how great John was.
Like, this fucking guy stared at the basilisk, and the basilisk became paralyzed.
Dumbledore proceeded to do a chest bump with John.
My God, I love this fucking guy!
Dumbledore said. He patted John on the back and John walked off the stage.
I'm gonna crack open a cold one with this guy later. God.
Everyone in the auditorium clapped.
Alright,
Dumbledore continued with more disgust in his voice.
let's wheel out the fucking twit.
Two students pushed a cart carrying a giant steel cage with Draco inside. He was pushing against the bars fiercely and his face was red with rage.
This is barbaric! You can't do this! Oh, shut the fuck up, you little twit! Your parents never wanted you anyway.
Dumbledore said. He pulled out his wand and materialized the snake within the cage. Draco screamed and crawled around to get away from the snake.
Do it! Looks like Draco wants to do is slither out, not slither in.
Dumbledore called out. The audience produced hearty laughs.
Now, students, You may conjure up tomatoes to throw at Draco.
Approximately 800 people did just that. It would be the 5th worst moment of Draco's life, the first being that time John upstaged him with his Yu-Gi-Oh collection. Just then, dark shadows flashed through the auditorium. Everything became darker and more ominous within an instant. Panic flew through everyone. Black smoke flew onto the stage and materialized. It was Voldemort.
Oh shit!
Dumbledore said and ran off the stage. The other adults quietly slipped away, leaving Voldemort alone with every single Hogwarts student. Voldemort gave an evil grin and looked upon the audience.
I seek my lifelong adversary. Where is he?
Harry took a deep breath. This was his moment. He stood up among the masses and called out to Voldemort. She didn't even knock. God, I'm lost now. Okay, Harry took a deep breath. This was his moment. He stood up among the masses and called out to Voldemort.
I'm here, and I won't let you hurt anyone.
Voldemort's smile faded. He now had a puzzled face.
No, you're not who I'm looking for.
Yes, I am.
Harry said, lifting up his hair.
You killed my parents and gave me this scar.
Huh? Oh, shit, that's right, I remember now.
Voldemort reflected.
Biggest regret of my life, honesty.
Don't you feel like a real monster?
Harry yelled.
No, I mean, I came here looking for John, and I regret investing so much time in you, of all people, as a nemesis. Huge mistake on my part.
You can't just make a nemesis and then change your mind.
Oh, you wanna fucking fight, bro? I'll fucking drop you right here, mate.
Harry realized that Voldemort could totally drop him, and he sat down quietly in shame. He shed a single tear.
Sorry about that.
Voldemort said.
And what an asshole this guy, but really, where is John?
Been here all along, a voice answered from behind. Voldemort immediately turned around and cast Avada Kedavra, but John was gone. Voldemort stood still, flabbergasted. Suddenly, John dropped down from the ceiling, throwing his famous shurikens at Voldemort. He blocked them all with his wand. John landed on the floor and stood up, pacing in circles around Voldemort.
Pull out your wand, boy.
Voldemort prodded. John slipped off his aviators. I didn't bring my wand, he started. But I am packing heat. John swiftly pulled out his pistol and fired 3 clean shots through Voldemort's head. The Dark Lord keeled over shortly after. John blowed away the smoke coming off the muzzle and put the gun back into its holster. Looks like this riddle is solved. Everyone in the auditorium clapped. Roses were thrown at John's feet. Dumbledore ran back on the stage.
Look what this freaking guy just did! Everyone, give it up for John!
John took his bows and headed backstage. Meanwhile, something changed in Hermione. In the midst of the celebration of John's greatness, she ran past everyone towards him. When she found John, he was talking to a man with spiky gray hair and a white lab coat. The man hugged John, then took out some sort of device which spawned a green portal. He stepped through it, and John walked away, facing Hermione.
Who was that?
Hermione said, Oh, he's just an interdimensional traveler named Rick. He asks for my advice and wisdom all the time. After all, he is the second smartest person in the universe.
Look, John, I need to tell you something.
John tilted his aviators down. Anything, he said. Hermione looked down anxiously. Then she grasped John's shoulders and held a long, furious kiss with him, the kind that would make a viewing audience really uncomfortable. She backed away, hoping that John wouldn't be mad. He was moving his lips, determining the quality of the kiss. 6 out of 10, he finally said.
What?
Hermione cried out.
But it was so real.
Sorry, John said. I already have someone close to my heart. He took out a picture of Asuna Yuki, his dearest anime waifu.
She's just a cartoon.
Oh, they messed me up. Oh, John clutched the photo to his chest. I know she's a cartoon, yet she's the realest person I know. Hermione started to speak again, but John raised his finger to her lips. Sorry, not sorry, he said. Hermione began to cry, and after a few moments, John dabbed on her, then walked away. When John went outside, he saw the whole school crowded out in the courtyard, staring up at a steeple. It was Harry. He was holding on to the spire and looking down.
Nobody here cares about me, eh?
he called out to the crowd.
I don't have anyone who cares about me.
The crowd collectively shouted, "Jump!" Harry Harry trembled with anguish and accepted his fate. He lifted his first foot into the air, but a voice rang out.
Stop!
Ron pushed his way to the front of the crowd.
You have me, Harry! You have me!
Ron took out his broom and flew to the spire.
Are you ready to climb aboard me stick, Harry?
Ron said as he extended his hand. Harry climbed aboard, shedding a single tear of joy. They flew to the ground together. Ron held Harry's hands and whispered.
Let's take this back to our place, yeah?
And they did. An hour later, students walking the halls could hear Ron shouting.
Stop me knob, Harry!
Hogwarts eventually had to build a separate dorm for Gryffindor because of all the complaints from students shouting about Ron and Harry's sweaty, never-ending sex. While construction was underway, all the male Gryffindor students were forced to bunk with the female students. Everyone was getting some except Hermione. Dumbledore almost immediately gave John full access and control to his private quarters. John made Dumbledore sleep in the tub of Gryffindor's old dorm. He heard Ron and Harry going at it each and every night. Hermione snuck out to John's new quarters to confront him. She peeked around the doorframe to see him pacing in circles. Something was wrong. She appeared in the doorway, and before John could react, she cast Stupefy. John was successfully immobilized. She ran up and apologized profusely.
I'm sorry I had to do this. Every time I approach you in the halls, you either ignore me or dab on me.
Hermione fumbled to find the right question.
Why are you so mean?
She said. John's face was stuck in place, but a grin slowly formed. Before Hermione could react, an energy blast knocked her back. When she pushed herself up from the ground, she saw John fully mobile and holding something. "Looks like you just activated my trap card," he said. Hermione took out her wand and fired spells at John in preemptive defense, but he dodged them easily. Their epic duel began. Draco peered into the room and saw what was happening. He'd also been tracking John.
Oh no.
He thought.
If I intervene, John will know I have a crush on him.
The very thought of it made Draco cringe. If he didn't take action, his senpai might die. But if he did, senpai would definitely know Draco liked him. He took a deep breath and ran between John and Hermione.
Exis Machinas!
He shouted, casting an immediate binding spell on Hermione. John relaxed and walked toward Draco. Draco looked away from his dark, beautiful eyes.
I didn't do it for you.
Draco pouted. Then he felt John's arms around him and felt a warm glow. Senpai was hugging him. Oh no. "I didn't need your help, Draco, but thanks," John said as he released his hug. He hoisted Hermione's body over his shoulder and gave Draco one last thumbs up as he left. Draco whispered a single word when he was sure John was gone.
Baka.
Hermione woke to find herself still paralyzed and propped up against the wall in the castle's highest tower. John was in front of her watching the sky. He had a lit cigarette in his mouth.
What's happening?
Hermione asked. "Oh, this?" John took his cigarette out. "It just makes me feel alive when nothing else can." Hermione saw the intense, real sadness on John's face.
I can help you. Mend your tortured soul.
"You sound like you're orgasming," she cried out. "No," John declared. "Only Asuna can do that," he said as he pulled out her picture. "And like you said, she isn't real."
Please, John, can't we start over?
"You still don't get it, do you?" John said, kneeling down before her. This time he fully removed his aviators to reveal dark red irises. "I've been roaming this world for 500 years in search of feeling something. I'm a vampire." He flashed his teeth. Hermione looked at them in astonishment. "The only thing colder than reality," he started, "is my heart." He turned away once more and lit another cigarette. Hermione finally understood. John was a creature full of sorrow.
Why am I here?
She asked after a long period of silence. "You tried to fight me. The world needs that type of bravery when he comes."
When who comes?
"My one and only equal in the multiverse, Shadow the Hedgehog."
But you're the strongest person ever. And incredibly attractive.
"I'm not strong enough to face him," John said, turning to face Hermione. "But you might be." With that, John gave a heartfelt wink to Hermione and fell backwards off the tower.
No!
Screamed Hermione as she struggled against her bonds. She was suddenly free and she rushed to the edge of the tower. She saw John burn to ashes as he fell, and then there was nothing. She couldn't hold back her tears. John finally felt something. Death. Hogwarts held a vigil for John. Many students would later on to say it was the most emotional moment of their lives. Even more students would say that the loss of John was equivalent to losing a child. John's death was so impactful that it actually got Harry and Ron to stop fucking. Everyone dropped flowers on his casket. Dumbledore was about to give his regards to the students, but a portal opened up behind him.
Oh, balls!
Dumbledore said and ran off the stage. An orange humanoid fox with two tails emerged, decked out in heavy post-apocalyptic gear. We need tails, we need tails.
My name is Tails. And I'm here to stop a tyrant from my world. Where's John?
Fuck me. God. There was silence. Tails glanced behind him to see John's casket.
No!
He yelled.
There's no hope now! Damn it!
He banged on the casket in anger. Hermione stood up.
John wanted me to carry out on his legacy.
Sounding like a little bitch. Like, seriously. This thing is already misogynistic enough. What? Oh, I'm sorry. You keep distracting me.
Lies!
He yelled.
What can you do that John couldn't?
Well, I'm a decent wizard and I have a smug sense of superiority over everyone. I'm also pretty hot.
Lies!
He yelled again.
You're a 6 out of 10 at best!
John said I could defeat Shadow.
Everyone gasped, including Tails.
How do you know the name of the destroyer?
Because I'm John's successor. Let me help you.
Tails hesitated and beckoned Hermione to get on stage with him.
My friends, Shadow is coming, and I need all the help I can get to face him.
Harry and Ron made their way to the stage, holding hands along the way. Draco also came up Draco also came up, much to everyone's surprise.
What are you doing up here?
Hermione asked rudely.
It's not like I'm here to avenge the only man I ever loved.
Draco said, turning away. He whispered in the faintest voice he can muster.
Baka.
Just then, another portal opened up several feet from the stage and a homemade space cruiser popped out and crashed to the side. From the wreckage stepped out the same man with the spiky gray hair and a lab coat that Hermione had seen earlier. He walked onto the stage drunkenly and grabbed the mic away from Tails.
My name is Rick Sanchez, and I went in on this quest. John was my closest friend and my personal hero.
You all fucking suck.
So it is settled.
Tails shouted out.
It is up to us to take out Shadow.
Not so fast, a voice came out from the back of the crowd. Students turned to see who it was and subsequently fainted. It was John, but he walked with a heavenly white glow around him in broad daylight.
But how?
Hermione shouted. God said I suffered long enough and resurrected me. I'm like Jesus, John said and took off his aviators to reveal white irises. But cooler, he finished. Everyone in the courtyard clapped. Draco and Hermione both felt their lower half quiver with delight. Tails was not shaken.
So can you defeat Shadow?
He asked with a glimmer in his eyes. John walked up and put his hand on Tails' shoulder. No, but together, we can. Everyone cheered as Rick prepared to take them to the Shadow Dimension, where their strongest enemy lived. Someone check the time.
It's 102.
We got time. The group landed in a dark, desolate wasteland of what was once a huge city. Buildings that stretched in every direction were coated in dust and tattered materials. It seemed that there was a perpetual sandstorm in this world. Everybody chose to stare at a different place in their own fashion. I was high when I wrote this. It was a lot to take in.
What happened?
Asked Ron.
That happened.
Tails said, peering down an empty street. Then the group looked above Tails to see a giant black floating orb with lighting trying to escape at its edges. It must have been the size of a small moon.
That's where Shadow is. He wanted to strip away any hopes the remaining survivors could have, so he constructed a giant base that would blot out the sun.
Wouldn't this only blot out that sun in this particular area?
Harry chimed in. The group collectively told Harry to shut the fuck up. John, being the unofficial but naturally appointed leader, commanded the group to move towards the orb and rest when nightfall came. They eventually got out of the city and out into untouched desert. They found a cave big enough to give all of them shelter and settled there. Hermione was in the process of lighting a fire. The rest of the wizards magically constructed tents. John, Rick, and Tails headed to the outskirts of the campsite. Rick had some grim news.
Shadow has some serious tech at his disposal. I'm blocking every device I have, but we have to walk there.
Oh fuck, we skipped a whole paragraph.
That's not good enough! Every day that tyrant holds power brings death and destruction!
Hey, I'm pretty sure you had more than enough time to stop him before begging John for help. Why didn't you do something then?
Don't act like you don't know what happened!
Tails growled, ready to pounce at Rick. Rick began to pull out gadgets from his lab coat. Hey, John yelled, getting in between them. This isn't why we're here. Tails and Rick became more calm and sheathed their weapons. Tails turned away and started to cry.
He took everything from me. He took everything from me, and I couldn't stop him.
Tails pulled out a torn, dirty Polaroid of him and another humanoid animal with their arms wrapped around each other.
Shadow killed my gay lover, Sonic, before any of us could stop him. Ever since then, I've been seeking vengeance for his death.
Nice explosion, dump buddy. Or nice exposition, dump buddy. Got anything real to contribute?
Rick said in a condescending tone. Tails stormed off back to the campsite. John turned to face Rick and simply said, "Not cool, bro." And with that, John followed Tails, leaving Rick alone. Rick took out a bottle of whiskey and drank it dry.
Oh, woe is me. Why can I not be an asshole?
Rick cried into the indifferent wind. A light-hearted acoustic rhythm played along with his tragic upset. This would only last 5 more seasons, tops. Back at the campsite, Ron and Harry were still fucking like rabbits. Hermione had finally lit a fire with a spell when Draco finally returned carrying a bunch of wooden logs.
I brought fire to keep the fire going through the night.
Draco said, dropping the pile at the fire's side. Hermione gave him a strange look.
We're wizards. We don't need logs.
Draco looked nervous. That's when it hit her.
You're trying to get John to notice you.
Hermione continued. Draco was taken aback.
Preposterous! I wasn't trying to get Senpai to notice my strong arms.
He shut his mouth after he realized what he said. Hermione put her hands on her hips in smug confidence that she found out the truth.
You can't tell John. He's not ready.
Draco begged. Hermione wasn't listening. She had to use this newfound knowledge to the best of her ability.
I won't tell John you like him.
Hermione decided. Draco gave a sigh of relief.
We'll have to force John to choose one of us.
She continued.
What, you like him too?
Draco stammered.
Of course I do. He's just so ridiculously attractive.
Hermione said.
Ah, cool. Don't forget how cool he is.
Draco added.
We have to pretend to be a couple in order to make John jealous and choose one of us.
But what if he doesn't choose me?
It's not about us. It's about what John feels.
You're right.
He said inside.
But how do we make this fake relationship look convincing?
Hermione and Draco both cracked their heads towards Ron and Harry's tent, from which various grunting and huffing noises came out of. They then turned their heads back and gulped. Hermione and Draco sat in one tent holding their knees, neither one of them willing to initiate anything. It was incredibly awkward. Hermione broke the tension.
I'm just gonna go back to my own tent and...
Yeah.
Said Draco.
We can say we did it.
She tried to reassure him.
Yeah.
He repeated. Everyone was in their respective tent when a loud howl flew across the land and everyone poked their heads out the tent to investigate. Tails was the first to fully emerge. He squinted into the horizon, then a look of fear spread across his face.
Everyone get up! We're in danger!
John ran up to Tails. What's going on?
Shadow traveled across the multiverse, finding and acquiring anyone willing to help him in his plans.
Furries, John realized. Dear God, every willing individual? Tails nodded. That could be in the millions. John lifted up Tails by the scruff. Why didn't you tell us this before?
I thought that they wouldn't be a problem.
Tails yelled.
In my time between visits, Shadow's army of furries went from a small cult to an army.
John placed Tails down with a stern look. We need to prepare everyone. And he walked off. The plan was this. Hold down the fort until the furries stopped coming. John, Rick, and Tails would be the front line, giving it to those furries, coming upon them furiously, penetrating them from the front and splitting them apart. The Hogwarts students would defend home base and, if need be, abandon their friends to escape with their lives. Rick used some science goggles or some shit to look down the horizon. He spotted a tan, moving smudge. A few moments later, he saw a group of furries dressed in dog/fox costumes. Then he saw a horde of furries dressed in all sorts of costumes from the animal kingdom, running straight for them.
I can portal us out of here, boss. It's not too late.
Rick called out to John. John nodded a firm no. They were going to give it to these furries. Hard. The first wave was easy enough. Rick had set up various turrets and traps. Tails was taking large amounts of them out with his rifle. John was doing most of the work, obviously. Each punch, kick, or shuriken John threw incapacitated at least 3 furies. Fuck. I'm sorry. The second wave was even bigger, however. The group was having trouble holding them back due to their sheer strength in numbers. It looked like this wasn't ending anytime soon. Then there was a sound. The sound of a motorcycle revving its engine that everyone in the desert heard. The furries instinctively and simultaneously kneeled.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
There's a figure moving on the edge of the...
Rick's voice was scratchy and cutting off. Almost like a shadow. John and Tails looked at each other in immediate horror. Then a motorcycle jumped the hill right in front of them, landing dead set in between John's group and the campsite defenders. We need a shadow.
No.
Tails gasped.
Yes, it is I, Shadow, the best OG Sonic villain. None of that Eggman or Chaos bullshit. Don't at me.
You killed the love of my life!
Tails screamed and flew towards Shadow. John tried to stop him, but it was too late.
Lol, I killed him because he was gay and you're gay too, so you're dead now.
Shadow said as he raised his iconic shotgun towards Tails.
No!
Harry yelled. He jumped between Tails and Shadow's shotgun, getting hit in the process.
Harry!
This is so bad. Ron screamed. Bits of Harry's blood were spread everywhere. It was a clean, explosive shot to the head. Hermione had to pick out Harry's guts out of her hair. Draco had to spit some out of his mouth. It's just really disgusting. Shadow was surprised, but he kept his cool.
Looks like he's the boy who didn't live.
Shadow laughed. He revved up his motorcycle and drove off, giving everyone the middle finger. All the furries chased after him. Soon the group was left alone once more, surrounded by the brains and blood and teeth of Harry's obliterated head. Ron was clutching Harry's body in his arms, bawling his eyes out.
We didn't even try out every position yet!
He cried. Tails looked away in shame. Rick took a swig from his flask. Hermione and Draco never really gave a shit about Harry, so they just tried to avoid attention like one usually does when the circumstances are this awkward. John knelt down and gave Ron a shoulder to cry on. Hours passed. The group found themselves trudging through the desert sands toward Shadow's death spear, feeling weary and defeated. They walked in a beeline formation, Ron holding himself together at the end. Hermione and Draco tried to utilize this quiet time by making sure John noticed their intimate actions with each other. They would even go so far as to lightly touch the other's hand. It was sickening to both of them, but they both wanted John's love more badly than anything.
We're close.
Rick said.
We'll be approaching the Death Sphere, yet the only entrance is on the bottom.
In its shadow, John finished. Everyone felt something sinister creep over them, but none would admit it. Soon enough, they were underneath the Death Spear. A small hatch automatically opened and let down a ladder. The group held an unspoken respect for each other as they climbed up. John went first. Once he got into the inside, the hatch slammed shut. No, he yelled. He pulled on the hatch, but even his godlike biceps wouldn't force it open. He was alone and unprepared in here. It was pitch black, except for something shining in the distance. Having nothing better to do, John headed towards it. No, John began. It can't be. Asuna Yuki came out of the darkness, beautiful and sparkly.
What do you mean, Johnny-san?
Asuna giggled.
I'm right here.
Sword Art Online didn't prepare me for this, John said, confused and dazed.
That's because this
Asuna giggled.
is something special.
She said as she ripped off John's trench coat and shirt. After John climbed up the ladder, Tails was next. Like John, Tails found himself in a dark place, at least until the lights turned on. He found himself in bed, the door flung open and the light switch being turned on. Someone really wanted Tails to wake up. That someone was Sonic.
I was worried you'd never get up.
Sonic smiled.
Are you ready, honey?
Their driveway suddenly turned into a fantastical forest path with a gleaming sunset sticking out. At the end, Tails couldn't help himself. He took out Sonic's hand and said,
I'm ready.
Rick went after Tails. He found himself on stage at the Golden Globes. And stranger than that, this was a world where the Golden Globes were actually respected and admired. He was called up by the host to go on stage. He wasn't sure why he was being called. He just saw everyone clapping. When he got on stage, the realization hit Rick. This was his ultimate dream. The host overshadowed his own thoughts.
Rick.
He said,
You
"Read the line!"
Okay. You have managed to make every single season of Rick and Marty interesting somehow by doing the same old tortured asshole routine for 23 seasons.
23 seasons!
Rick said in disbelief.
Yes, your show's fandom has grown so large that they are literally committing acts of terrorism in your name.
Wow.
Rick trailed off. Hermione and Draco were next. In a flash, each of them were shown an entire lifetime together. Draco and Hermione went on dates, got married, settled down, had kids, and grew old together.
But I'm gay.
Draco yelled to the room.
I'm straight, but like, not for Draco.
Hermione yelled. Shortly after, a voice on an intercom came online. It sounded like Shadow badly trying to disguise his own voice.
So, to be clear, what you just saw, was it your fantasy?
No.
Oh, no?
They both answered.
Shit.
Shadow uttered.
Well, you're trapped in there anyway. It would take an event of ridiculous proportions to ever upset me or this program, so you're just gonna stay there forever.
Ron was last and tried to enter the hatch, but a note materialized which said, "Lol, gays not allowed in Shadow's clubhouse." Ron crumpled it up and cried in anguish. Shadow was manipulating everything from a monitor system. He was able to isolate each and every one of the heroes and project their biggest desires to them so they couldn't just leave. They wouldn't want to. Right then, Shadow checked on John's fantasy. Things were getting steamy with Asuna. She just finished removing his pants and... oh. Shadow gasped in astonishment.
No way it's that big.
Shadow thought.
No fucking way.
Shadow was only taking quick glances because he wasn't gay, of course. But it was not believable in the slightest just how big it was. It must have been a trick or something. Inadequacy fell over Shadow. He told himself what he learned from those great therapy sessions.
You do great things every day, Shadow.
He repeated to himself.
No reason to get hung up on something like this. You've won.
But as he said hung up, it flashed in his mind just how hung John was. It wasn't fair. Shadow was feeling super insecure right about then. He hesitated, then pushed the button that ended every simulation. Everyone was torn away from their fantasy and looked around their respective rooms in confusion. Soon enough, they all found the security camera and focused on that.
All right.
Shadow grabbed the intercom.
What the fuck?
Everyone stayed silent and still. They didn't understand.
How is it that big?
Shadow demanded.
That's just ridiculous.
How is what so big? John asked, zipping his pants up.
Your dick, man! It's huge!
Oh, John said, feeling uncomfortable. No, I'm pretty sure I'm just above average.
No! The size of yours compared to mine, it's unbelievable.
Why were you looking at it, man? That sounds pretty gay.
I'm not gay. I just want to know why it's so big.
Shadow paused.
I'm not gay.
He repeated. I don't know. Maybe yours is just abnormally small.
No, it's not. It's perfectly serviceable.
You've got issues, man.
Fuck you.
Shadow screamed and pulled a giant lever on his control panel. Everyone teleported from their prison cells to a wide open space in front of Shadow.
Fucking one versus me, one, you asshole.
Oof, oof. All right, team, this is it. John said. Everyone got into their defensive position. Shadow just stood there, his shotgun resting by his side.
You can't win.
Shadow laughed.
None of you can beat me in pure edge.
John ran at him, throwing shurikens, but Shadow blocked all of them. He hit John with the end of his shotgun, and John tumbled to the ground.
Even when you were a vampire, you weren't edgy enough to take me on.
But I am.
Hermione called out, stepping forward.
You?
Shadow cackled.
The sweet know-it-all from your privileged magic school. What could possibly have happened to you that would make you more edgy than me?
Hermione pointed her wand at herself. She muttered something under her breath, and then a red mist overtook her, and she came out completely different. White goth face makeup, nose and lip rings, spike collar, black hair with red highlights, skull t-shirt, dagger earrings, and more. Her transformation left everyone in shock.
What makes me more edgy than you?
She began.
I got friends on my John multiple times.
Shadow gasped. He dropped his shotgun and took off running towards the motorcycle. Hermione flicked her wand and used her newfound Wiccan magic to levitate Shadow back to the group. Despite his struggling, Shadow couldn't break free. He looked terrified. Hermione locked eyes with John, then went back to Shadow.
I banish you.
She paused and smirked.
To the Shadow Realm.
A portal opened up in front of her, and Shadow was subsequently sucked into it, screaming for help along the way. It was over. The group heard a blood-curdling cry from outside the Death Spear. The furries had lost their master. John walked over to Hermione and kissed her passionately. He stepped back and examined her. 7 out of 10, he said, and walked away. Hermione wiped away tears of joy.
I'll take it,
she said. Everyone hugged one another and prepared to go back to their respective worlds. Tails went to Hogwarts and after some time paired himself with Ron. They would continue to have wild sex, and Harry would be forgotten by everyone. Rick went back to his own world and continued to make a hit melodramatic TV show that would tease evil Morty for 5 more fucking years. Hermione also went back to Hogwarts under her new persona, Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway. John went back to his McMansion on the Finnish coast, mourning for the rest of his life his lovely and virtuous Asuna Yuki, who he'd never get the chance to be with again. That's a wrap, boys. That's a wrap.